Okay, so we're going to start the conversation right now, and I would like to start with Kenya. Yeah, biological sciences panel. So, how was the interview like for you? What was your experience? How did you feel? Okay.
I thought I did horribly. So yeah, no, I had like two things where I went into the interview and then everyone was super nice. I think it was the first year where they started in-person interviews again. So I was one of the people that chose to come in from Canada. And then no, it was great. The people were amazing. I went in and I sat down and I had like memorized a bunch of facts about the Gates Cambridge Scholarship, none of which came up for me. So it was, all of a sudden like how many placements have there been over the years? Like how much funding is there? Like who was the lead? Who was this? And they just literally asked me about myself. They asked about what I had done during COVID. And then about 50% of my interview was mainly about the research proposal that I had. Mind you, a lot of the stuff in my research proposal were not things that I had done previously. So they did ask me a little bit about the methods sections, like how I'm going to do this. And because my work is mainly based on individuals and participants in clinical trials, they wanted to make sure that I wasn't, coming in and establishing a trial from the beginning, because that itself will take about 2 to 3 years. So I went in and I said, there's already trials in place, there's already ethics, all I have to do is receive the training. My supervisor is this, essentially indicating that the work that I'm proposing can be done in the span of 3 years, yeah. And then, if that additional time is needed, I can use that additional time for things like caucuses, additional stuff. But overall, it went well on their end. I think they ended up giving it to me. But afterwards, I did mess I was like, oh, I didn't know 2 method sections. So, but apparently, it went okay.
Great, thank you. How about you, Justin?
I had a similar experience to Camille in 2 ways. One, which was that it was really, really focused on my research proposal. I think 80 to 90% of my interview was specifically about things I'd written in my proposal. And then the other thing that I felt similarly about was that I felt that I did horribly. I interviewed virtually from Hong Kong, which is where I'm from. It was like 10 p.m. at night, and they were so far away from the camera, I couldn't see their facial expressions, anything like that. So we can talk a little bit more about virtual interviewing, but I think it's important not to be thrown by kind of whatever the setup of the room is, and to make sure that you're able to kind of deliver and connect, even if you can't really see how they're reacting to what you're saying in live time. My questions were all very theoretical. I think for the people in the arts panel, you can probably expect that you might not necessarily have someone who works directly in your field. But I think all the humanities ask questions of each other that we're all generally very interested in each other's field. So I would expect, questions from people who work in English, for instance, who might be thinking about your work in a slightly more different way. So be ready to have those kind of broader theoretical conversations about your work, I would say is what you should expect. Out of the 3 questions I got about my proposal, there were words in like 2 of them that I didn't understand. And I think in retrospect, if I were to interview again, I probably would ask them to explain what those words mean. So I think also don't be afraid if there are like academics using theoretical terms that you don't know, to be like, what do you mean? Can you help me out? I was like too afraid to be like, what do you mean? So I've censored them and it was fine in the end. But from my experience, it was a very, very technical interview from my end.
Okay, so before we take Nacho, let's take Anissa. So what was it like on the social science panel?
Yeah, I actually want to emphasize a point that both Justin and Camilla made, and that was despite not having panelists that were necessarily in my field, they still asked very specific questions about not I didn't get as much theory as just Justin got. I mean, I might have gotten a bit, but a lot of it was the like I emphasized in my proposal like the practical aspect of my work and the impact I wanted to have. And I definitely got questions about that, even questions I didn't expect to, just because I think I went in a little bit thinking that I oftentimes, like, in life, I have to explain my research a bit more, talk about Sudan a bit more, because people might know a bit more now with the recent conflict, but generally I've experienced a lot of people not knowing much about Sudan. And so I did part expect to have that in my interview. And then I mean, pleasantly surprised, but also just like shocked about how specific their questions were, and how much I was able to have a good conversation about the reality and the possibilities for the future of Sudan and the future of displacement generally. And so my point here is that even though your panelists might not be from your field, expect to have a discussion and um, a good conversation and good questions about your work, like very specific questions about your work.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you. So, Nacho?
Okay, so for me, I was quite nervous at the beginning, and I think that they could tell because the first question they asked me was like, "How are you?" So they are comprehensive somehow. They know that it's a very stressing period. That for some of you, it's like the only source of funding you have. For other people, it's like, oh, maybe you have another funding, but you really want SCAPE. So they understand the situation, so they were comprehensive. So at the beginning, were like more chill, like more, oh, hi, how are you? Are you living in Cambridge now? Blah blah. So it was more like a small talk, like 5 minutes, not more, to be honest. But so they calm down a little bit my stress. They started the interview, and it was quite technical. I didn't expect that because you read this web page and it's a bit like, oh, why they want to change the world? Why they want to be a leader? Like something like that. I didn't get those questions.
Yeah.
The only thing that they asked me that is in the web page is why Cambridge and not another research institute. So maybe it's a question that you can prepare, but this is quite panel dependent. And also it depends on the flow of your conversation. So because I was explaining my research proposal, and also they asked me, because I was doing my master's, they asked me if I already have results or something like that. So it was quite easy to link my PhD proposal with the results I already have. So I think it's something that they really like. For me, I think it was the best interview I've ever had, because normally you are so stressed and people don't connect with you because they have many applicants. This time I had the feeling that, oh, they took the time to connect with you a little bit. And then it's just, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, I don't remember.
5 minutes.
35 minutes or something, maybe it was a little bit longer because I was so nervous at the beginning. But yeah, mine was in person, and also it was the first time I had an interview in person. So maybe for you guys, if someone from Europe or I don't know, another place you are coming to Cambridge for having an interview in person, and it's your first interview, I think it's the best experience you can have for a first interview. Yeah, so it was a very nice experience. It was more focused on technical questions. And yeah, the only question I got asked that is more like personal, it was by Cambridge. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Last thing, how was your experience?
Oh, my experience. So mine was quite funny because, like Kimia, I prepared how to introduce myself, why I should be a good scholar, and I was really, really ready to like justify why they should pick me. And then the first question I got is, why should we fund your research? Like, why are you doing this kind of research? And I'm like, okay. So immediately, and we're going to get into that conversation later as we go on. But for me, I was expecting to introduce myself, and they just skipped that part and got into my research proposal straight up. So I had to like quickly get into the technical mode as fast as possible. And I think it was a very interesting conversation, right? Because they were really trying to see if I knew my research. That was what they were asking. So you said this in your research proposal. If you're going to carry out this kind of research, what are the things you need to do? So those are the kind of questions they had to ask me. And I also needed to justify why I was choosing a particular method to answer a research question over the other. So I would really say that the interview was very research heavy. It was very technical, but at the same time, they were very warm and approachable. So it was okay to tell them, oh, could you please come again? So Justin was saying he was afraid to ask them questions.
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid. Yeah, because at some point they asked the question that I think I didn't hear them properly or I didn't understand what they were saying. And I just asked them, could you please take that question again? So it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask them to repeat themselves. And it's okay to even tell them, I don't know this question, but this is the idea I have. And we're also going to get into how to find the questions like that as we proceed in this conversation. But I hope this has given you an insight into how the interview opens up and how the panel might actually approach you during your interview. So I want us to move on to the next question because we've talked about how the interview looks like or what it looks like. Now, we know that for you to do well in your interview, you need to prepare. It's very important. So I want to ask you, Anissa, we're going first with you now. How did you prepare for your interview? What were the things you did? What were the things that helped you? And in retrospect, what were the things you think were not necessary? So over to
Mhm.
you.
Yeah. I think you actually emphasize or you like just like exemplified a point of you're going to get thrown off right by the questions you might get thrown off because you were expecting this order or this specific question, but what's key here is that you want to have certain points that you want to make sure that you get a chance to say, but you might not get the chance in the way that you expected, right? So just have those points and just be, I guess, just be able to pivot. So, you might get asked a technical question and you can first, well, don't like not answer the question. So answer the question and then find a way to connect it to this like specific point that you were like, I need to like bring this up. I want to get this across somehow. So I think the point, like key part there is finding a way to incorporate or um, say that detail that you wanted to like somehow bring in and you do that by practicing by like having more than like having a bunch of people like interview you, doing a lot of practice interviews and making sure those people ask you, or they probably will, if you practice many times and have different people interview you for practice, then they're going to ask you different questions and you want to be able to answer all those questions while being able to you want to be able to answer those questions and fit in your key points that you think are important to say.
Oh, great.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, you
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
All right, actually, would you want to tell us about your preparation?
Yeah, so I think for the technical part, you are almost ready prepared because you prepared the interview for the department and you did it very well. Otherwise, you are not shortlisted for Gates. So maybe you have to repeat somehow the preparation you did for the department one. And I also prepared all of the questions that was in the webpage. I mean, maybe it's not useful, but it's something you can do so you are relaxed. I think it's important to be relaxed. So if for you it's more relaxing to say, okay, I'm gonna have a small answer for this question that they have. Because maybe like, oh, I already know my example of leadership. I already know my example of improve the life of others or whatever. That's, I think, a very important part of the prep. And also, uh, there is a question that I got asked. I don't know about you guys, but at the end they asked me, "Oh, do you have any question for the panel?" So I think this question is quite difficult. So if you can prepare it, it's very good, and you can trick it somehow to end up talking about something you want to share with them. So yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I think this is my whole preparation. So for example, for this question, I was because my research is quite theoretical, so I was like, oh, I cannot improve the life of others, at least in this in my life as well. No? But I try to put an example where I improve the life of others using coding and this kind of stuff. So I ask an answer like, "Oh, do you think that I'm able with my project to improve the life of others?" And they asked me, "Oh, do you think so?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." For example. No, so I think this last question is your opportunity to convey some information that you are missing in the interview. So you probably are like, okay, I did horrible or something like that. So this is your opportunity when they ask you this question to add something that they didn't ask you and you want to share because you said, okay, this is quite important or this is something that makes me unique, suitable for this scholarship. Everyone here is great. So,
Great. Thank you.
we have so much luck to be part of this community.
Yeah.
So I went about it quite a way like a STEM person does. So I gave like a document with possible
Same.
possibilities. Okay. And then I had like 3 to 5 bullet points in order of like the most significant one I want to indicate in the interview to ask, and then all the way to like the least important. And then I think just knowing your research inside out is really important. But besides that, I don't think anyone expects you with the research that you do in the span of 3 to 4 years to change the world. Like there's no way you're going to cure cancer in the span of 3 to 4 years. So I think it's okay to be very open about the fact that the research you do now might lead to something else, but it isn't. It's okay to be okay with the fact that the research that you do now may not be as significant in 10 years as what it would be if like you had spent 20, 40 years on it. So I think for me, so for example, like my research proposal was on SARS-CoV-2, so how the virus evolves with in the specific context of SARS. But then my previous research has been on HIV and other RNA viruses. So I think one of the questions, for example, that they asked from me was, do you think SARS is going to be significant in the span of like 5 to 10 years? And I specifically said, I don't think it's going to have the biggest impact, like relative to some other viruses that have high prevalence now. And then one of the doctors on the panel was like, oh, I tend to disagree, and she gave her reasons. And then I said, well, you know, it's okay to also have like not disagreements, but actual conversations about that. So I listed my reasons for that. But then I think what Nacho said specifically, so when you're making your document or however you're planning to prepare, have key points about examples of how you demonstrated leadership, how you demonstrated like, I remember like for example, I even mentioned applying for a grant that I never even got. Yeah. So it was just like the idea of like you going out of your way to apply for something that you don't need to in order to help like make some kind of significance or difference, even if it's in a small community in a small town in British Columbia.
Yeah.
So yeah, no matter how small you think the work that you've done is, I think those are like the most meaningful instances of you actually trying to become this great person in your field.
Okay, Justin.
I guess a couple of things. At first is just echoing what everyone else said. The technical preparation was something I didn't do a lot of. I had spoken with other finalists who had an interview that looked very different, that focused more on their kind of leadership and why they wanted to be in the Gates community. And so I ended up preparing quite a lot of that. I was working a full-time job, and I remember the day of the interview, I like sat in the office and was just preparing questions all day. And then the interview looked very different from what I expected. So with that retrospection, I would say definitely look more at the technical stuff, especially in the humanities. I think if you're quoting specific theorists or historians or thinkers, there's a good chance your panel is relatively familiar with a lot of these things. So they might work with these people, they might have spoken to these people. So I think really think about the secondary literature you're using and be familiar to speak on that if you quoted it or cited it. I also think, to what everyone else is saying, you don't necessarily have the chance. I had 4 questions total in my interview. And so you don't always have the chance to say the things you want to say or demonstrate why you should be a Gates scholar. But you can do that through your answers by showing that you're aware of what impact looks like in your field or in your research. Like even if your research isn't changing the world, if you show them a sense of like, I want to do this because it will impact the field or impact this community in ABC ways, I think you're showing that you're thinking about the things that the scholarship wants you to think about. And the other way you can distinguish yourself, because I think everyone who's interviewing is going to have great research and great academics and great everything, is just to show that you have enthusiasm to be part of the community, but also the enthusiasm to be having the conversation with them, right? Like I think you're going to leave a better impression if you're showing them that you're not nervous, that you're not just there to answer their questions, but you're there to have kind of a fruitful discussion with them. Not everything has to be right?
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
if you show that you're excited to be part of this community and you can demonstrate that you understand the impacts of your research, I think that will set you apart from, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So I would just add to what everyone has said, because for me, when I was preparing, I came across a very short YouTube video, and it really changed how I prepared for my interview. And this person was one of the panelists. I can't remember the exact year now, but he said something that when people come for interviews, they just come to churn out everything they've written on their essay, on their application materials. And the reason they are inviting you for interview is for you to go further on what you have said, not just to come and repeat everything you have said. So when I heard that, I decided to go over how I had prepared for my interview. And I did three major things. Number one, research, like everybody has said. I had to really understand the questions. Like naturally, I went back to the website. I checked each of those questions, and then I tried to script out my answers. So that's the second thing, research, scripting. So if I'm asked to give an example on leadership, how do I want to answer? So I wrote out the exact way I wanted to answer that question. If I was asked about my research, this is exactly what I want to say. Of course, I'm not asking you to cram your answers. No, that's not a good way to go about it. But you could have a mental framework to say that if I'm asked on leadership, I want to talk about 3 key points that will make them remember me. So that's where you're not cramming. And at the same time, you can remember your framework, so you don't have to stutter or feel less confident about what you're saying. And the final thing was practice. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I practiced to the point of setting a camera in front of myself and simulating the interview experience, just presenting to myself. I had mock interviews. I presented to my dad, presented to my sisters, anybody who cares to listen to me. Right. So I would say that research, scripting, and practicing, because the more you practice your lines, the things you want to say, 2 things will happen. Number one, it becomes very natural. And I think that's where a lot of people also miss it when it comes to interview. When you appear before an interview panel and your answers do not feel authentic, they feel like you're just lying because you want to get the fund on the scholarship. So one of the things I also did was that every of my examples had little stories laced into my responses. I tell people that when you're answering questions in an interview, and if I give an answer that Kimia can also give, and there's no difference, then it doesn't feel authentic to me. If I'm coming to say that, oh, I'm interested in malaria research because as a child, I had cerebral malaria, Kimia cannot come to say that because that's not your lived experience. And so I think that was one of the things I said. And they were like, oh my goodness, did you survive it? I said, of course, I survived that. That's why you can interview me, right? I think that was actually my opening line when they asked me to justify why they should fund my research. I had to tell them that if I had died because of cerebral malaria, they would have lost a potential good scholar. And you could see the look on their face like, oh, wow, all right. So I'm just trying to say that whatever responses you're giving, make it personal and authentic as much as you can, because that's what makes the difference between myself and Justin. That's what makes the difference between myself and Anessa. So research, script practice, and make your answers very authentic as much as you can. I saw some questions on the Slido link, and I think we've actually addressed some of them. I would just want us to quickly clarify something, and Justin, I want you to maybe help us with that. So people have been asking that, okay, I want to get the action. Yes, so what is the matrix of the seats in general? How are the scholarships distributed among the different fields? And for me, I feel like that's a question the Gates Trust should answer, but maybe you want to speak to that. I don't
So
know.
you can actually see those details if you go on the website, because we publish an annual report. I don't know if the one for this past year has come out, but certainly the previous ones, if you just search annual report, Gates, Cambridge, and Google, and the year, you'll find it. And there will be a distribution from the panels of how many people got the scholarship. I think if you average across the years, it's pretty even, but some years there are more in the arts than the social sciences. Not materially different to the point that like it's like 2 times or 3 times, but certainly I think my year there was quite a big arts representation relative to the whole cohort. And I guess there was a question also about country limits.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there is no sense from us that there is, whether or not there's something behind the scenes mechanistically we don't know about.
I think the only thing is, there's set allocated number of scholarships for US applicants.
Yeah.
And the rest is international, and then the rest is determined by just.
Yeah.
Okay, their own attributes.
Yeah.
Wait, could you repeat that louder? I think we didn't get it on the
I
mic.
think- Yeah, of course. So I think it's just the only thing that we know for sure, it's that there are a set number of applicants from the US and a certain number of scholarships that go to US applicants.
Yeah.
The rest is international.
Okay, thank you very much. So
So-
I'll just take, okay.
Adding onto that, there is some people asking about the departments or fields or something like that. So you are already shortlisted. So it's just gonna be about your interview.
Yeah.
So the allocation between departments, I think it's already done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that. So if you're invited to the interview, you are done. Yeah, you just have to do the interview. But yeah,
Yes, so we have another question here. It says, does technical mean we should expect detailed scientific questions? I'll say yes, like being able to explain concept or discuss our previous research in depth. So I wasn't asked to describe my previous research because the questions were really focused on your research proposal. So, but you can expect very technical and scientific questions based on what you're proposing to do for your PhD. I think MPhD students also might need to carry out research, particularly biological sciences. I think some of them have to. I'm not so sure about that, but I think some of them have to. All right. So another question here says, should we prepare any slides or short presentation? No, because you do not even have enough time
Yeah.
to say everything you want to say, not to talk of having a presentation. So no. So where to find sample questions and gates? I do not think there's sample questions. I don't think so.
No. I think there's just like a web page that
Yeah.
says, if you're, what are the key aspects of a GATES applicant? And you should frame your answers to answer each one of those 4 points.
And that's on the Gates Cambridge website. So you can always check the interview section and you would have access to
yeah,
it
I think that is how to prepare.
to prepare your.
Yeah, and there you find the questions. As we told you, our interviews at least were more technical in general, but also some of the questions maybe are important to prepare it. And also, what you mentioned about the script thing is not that you repeat things automatically. It's just because you can be so nervous that you can be like, okay, I don't know what to answer. So have something in your mind that you're already prepared to, okay, I'm gonna say something. I'm not gonna forget anything. Yeah, but don't worry if you forget things. It's just to have a mental schedule
Yeah.
of what you want to say.
Great. Okay. So there's another question here. It says, who would you recommend we practice with? Git recommends from your grandpa to your prof. How can we prepare the interviewers? I would answer them. You can hold with your opinion. I think for the preparation, the most important thing is to practice so that you build confidence, because the people you would practice with might not necessarily have a very deep understanding of what you're proposing to do. So I really do not think it's about the person. It is so much more about how you're able to present your ideas and communicate authentically. So that's the idea I want you to have. So with that, I think you can practice with anybody, but it's also very good if you have people who might have maybe a little understanding of what you're proposing to do so that they can ask you follow-up questions, because most of the questions from your interview will build up on your responses to the first question. So if you can get those kind of people, that's fine. But even if you can't, it's okay to practice on your own, practice with people who might not understand what you're coming in to do, but at least it helps you build confidence and you're able to share your research or anything you're coming to defend much more at the interview. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think as someone in STEM, I'm quite an introverted, quiet person. To the point where if I'm like in an interview or anything, like I'm literally shaking sometimes, like I have so much anxiety. So I think like Blessing mentioned, literally just sitting down and what worked for me was I essentially had my friends and my family interview me in different locations. So that when I go to a completely different location, I feel comfortable saying those answers. And it was just like, I don't know, I decided to like just focus on a point on their face, and then essentially that's how I got over my worrisome, like my anxiety. But and then also I'm a person that says quite a lot when I'm just thinking. So I made the outward effort of actually making sure that I don't say that when I'm doing an interview, so that I can sound more confident. like Nacho said, don't memorize your answers because it can come, especially in the scientific field, it can come off very robotic. It's just more about understanding the details of your work, understanding why it's important, and then framing your answers around that.
And also, I think it's quite important because you already have, I think, your interviewers. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, I was in the physical panel, but I was doing more multidisciplinary research. So the focus of my questions are more biologically based. But I was interviewed by people doing physics. So also this is an opportunity to explain the relevance of your research, make it understandable for other people that maybe is not familiar with your question. For me, one of the things that I prepared the most, it was how relevant is my research? Because they cannot understand. They were like, okay, you're doing a model using Newton's equations of motions. Oh, this is not new. No, but what is new is the application, no? Or what is relevant is the application, and no one else in the world is doing that. So try to make them understand the relevance, because for you maybe it's super easy to say, oh, this is super relevant, no one else is doing it, this is like cutting edge research, but maybe they don't understand it. So because you already know the people that are interviewing you, you can read about them and also prepare that way. So maybe your professor, I mean your PI or someone like that is very good one, because they can make you very insightful questions. But maybe a person that is at the university but is not quite related is better, because maybe they can say, oh, and why this is important, why this is relevant. This is worth it to have a PhD at Cambridge. I mean, for sure it is, no? But like maybe you have to reframe a little bit your answers, thinking about that, about the people is gonna listen to your question, listen to your answers.
I was just gonna say, I think Elisa wants to say something.
Oh no, you go. I'll go after you.
Okay, I was just gonna say there were quite a few questions about the MPhil interview, and I think. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna talk about actually. Yeah. So I was yeah. So I was gonna just
ask you to speak to that. So do you want to do that now?
yeah. So the MPhil interview was quite different from the PhD one for me, mostly because for the MPhil you have to talk about more why that program is a good fit for you. So why Cambridge, but specifically why that program, and like why that supervisor. What are you going to learn from them? What are you going to gain from this program, and why it is, why like you need it, right? So I found my MPhil was in Polis, but the multidisciplinary gender studies program, and it was that one I felt like it was pretty easy to explain why it was so like necessary, because it's a unique program in that there aren't any other that I know of multidisciplinary gender studies programs. And so I was very easily able to relate it back to my research, which isn't explicitly gender related. And so have like a good reason, have like, do your research on why you really want this and why it's gonna be beneficial for the community, for the Cambridge community, but also just like the wider world community. And I had another point on, so in preparing, I did a mock interview that with professors that was like quite distressing, in that I was almost arguing with the professor, which I wouldn't recommend to do, but it was like I was getting so much pushback, and I was getting quite distressed in it. Like I was very passionate about it, so I was a bit hurt, and a bit hurt by the pushback, and from that I learned to have some control over your emotions, but also be prepared for that. You might not get a panelist that is as passionate about your work as you are, right? And so just be prepared to explain its relevance, explain how, how it might be relevant to them, or like interest them in a, whatever their field may be. And so I think just be prepared for like the different types of interviews the different interview environment you might have, because I do think my first one and second one were different. For the my first time, it was the first time, so then it was I was probably more nervous, but it didn't feel that friendly, and I was expecting a more friendlier environment for the interview. There was one panelist who I thought was friendly, and I was able to talk to him a bit more. But in my second for the PhD, it felt very conversational, and the panelists felt really interested in my work, and one of them I remember he knew, or both of them, but or honestly all three of them were great, but one of them knew a bit more about my research, and so we were able to have a fruitful conversation about the future of post-conflict displacement and how we can reimagine a more inclusive world. And so, just so my point here is that this, despite what the environment is, just be prepared for the different types of interview you might walk into, and don't let it discourage you, but also just be able to get your points across.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to build upon that to say that no matter how much prepared you are, you would get questions that actually hold values. Like I did, I got a question, and in my mind, I'm like, where's that coming from? It's okay. So when you have questions like that, difficult questions or unexpected questions, how do you handle it? What's the best way to approach it? So, Justin?
It's a great question, because I feel like my entire interview was questions that I wasn't prepared to answer. I think the first thing is to kind of find safe ground, right? Because the first thing when you're thrown off, you're like, I don't know what to do. But I think if you're able to break it down in a way to say like, well, what's the closest thing I can grab onto in terms of how that relates to the things that I have prepared for. But obviously you don't want it to come off as if you're just answering the question with something else that you've prepared. But if you're able to pull it a little bit closer, then that helps, right? So for instance, I was asked, my work is quite like theoretically grounded in the idea of solidarity as something that deserves to be explored a little bit further historically and analytically. So I think the question was about like, okay, well, you talk about political solidarity and very formal kinds of solidarity, but what are some informal kinds of solidarity that you might want to think about? And I was like, well, I've never thought about that in my entire life. But then you kind of, I think she then tried to help me to be like, well, what about the ways in which people interact day to day? And then you can think back to the things you've read or broaden your own thinking. So I think don't be too limited by the things that you have prepared also. You can lean on them to kind of guide you a little bit as well, to say like, can you tell me a little bit about like what direction you're hoping to hear from me in if you're really stuck? And I think they can then give you little bits that then spur you to move in different directions. And I guess another thing for the virtual interview is that like, your face is going to be huge on the camera screen, just the way it makes those faces huge on our screen. So just, I think, be aware of that, because I think the little, like, if you flinch a little bit, or you look obviously really nervous, or looking to the side and can't focus, like, those things do get a bit more magnified, because you're bigger than what you would look like compared to that. It's better now that it's in Gates House, but the year I interviewed, I was on a giant screen and they were sat at the back of the room. So yeah, and then just know that like, even if you feel thrown off, you don't want to look thrown off, because then things start to kind of spiral a little bit. So as much as your brain is kind of going through all sorts of things, like the way you project visually is really important.
Right. Did you have a similar experience?
No, I was in person. So I think for me, I had two questions that I came out saying, this was what broke me. One was me trying to explain a method that I had never previously used before, and I had mixed up, like I just read about it through the papers. So it was, and I had mixed up fluorescence versus luminescence. And it was, I thought it was like a big deal, but then, I remember after my interview, I was like, oh, and then the second question was again, like, do you think the virus that you're going to study is going to be meaningful in like 5 to 10 years? And I had said not to the same extent as some other emerging viruses. And I think the idea behind that was like, why would we fund you if you don't think it's important? And I had to frame it like, after that, I followed up with, however, the techniques that we learn while realizing the current viruses and the current systems that are currently in play globally, then we can possibly better prepare for future pandemics. So it wasn't necessarily just about this virus, but specifically learning, like using what you learned here and applying it elsewhere. And for me, I made a point, like throughout the entire interview process in different ways of addressing the needs of individuals that are most often affected, but most likely to be studied prospectively as opposed to proactively. So essentially, a lot of times the viruses will spread in populations that don't have the infrastructure to actually deal with them. And then, a lot of these more, I guess, affluent institutions come in, take the samples, study them, publish it, but years after their actual significance. So the idea was turning the question from which I had thought that I had kind of done poorly on and framing it against I guess my entire objective was the fact that I'm going to study viruses and hopefully make an impact in the communities that aren't studied well. Yeah.
Do you have any similar experience?
Yeah, so for me, the only question that it was a little bit more tricky was that they asked me, there is other models in the field that do the same thing as you want to do. Why are you doing it? So I think they really like that I acknowledge the existence of these other models. So I knew the literature and I explained to them why they weren't suitable for the project I wanted to do. For that reason, that was the motivation behind to use this model that my group is developing to answer the questions that we want to tackle that is not already answered, to be honest, but we are on our way, I think, somehow. So yeah, so I think it's important that if you did a good preparation, you are more likely to know more than them about your topic. So if they are asking you, oh, why are you using this technique and not the other, or this model, not the other, or this system, not the other, you should know the answer. And you probably know. So be confident. And if you are not right, it's fine. Because maybe they also don't know. So yeah, no, but, I think it's important to be confident about your research. Show them like, yeah, maybe you are nervous about the interview, but no, you're not nervous about your research, and you are the best person in the world to do the research you are gonna do. So be focused on that and reinforce it to yourself. Like, yeah, you are the best one.
I think Nacho also highlights a very good point in his example, is that have a positive attitude. Don't take their questions as, oh, they're attacking me or like my research. They just want to know more about it. And they want you to succeed there. They're here to learn about you and your research. So if they're asking questions that that might seem more nerve-wracking, it's not to trip you up, it's just to get to know more about it.
I'll just add to that to say that the way I handle difficult questions is to start by telling them what I know about the question. So if you're asking me what you know, or if you're asking me, okay, why are you interested in DNA replication in Plasmodium falciparum? And let's say I don't have a straight answer to that, I'll start by telling them what I know about DNA replication. Because by doing that, I start to recollect the things I already prepared for around that subject. And most times when you start by answering what you don't know from something that you know, you would eventually get answers that would help you answer that question, or you would have been able to tell them that I actually have an idea about what you're asking me, instead of just like Justin said, showing everything that, oh, I don't know this, I'm scared, I'm nervous, and all of that. So it's usually a very great way to just start by telling them what you know and gradually build upon your responses. And it's okay to tell them, okay, I've not studied so much about this. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I would actually go more to learn about what you asked me. It's a good way to also wrap up your conversation, and they're not trying to attack you. They just want to be very sure that you know what you're coming in to do, because it's actually love money, to be honest. All right, so we're coming to the end of this conversation, and I would just like us to talk about the logistics. Some are going to interview in person, some would interview virtually. So let's also run through that, and we'll take other questions on the Slido link and wrap it up. And wishing you all the very best. So talking about your interview, Anissa, you mentioned that you interviewed in person and you interviewed virtually. So I would want you to talk more about.
I did both in person.
Oh, great. So I would want you to tell us what that felt like for you. Was it more scary to be interviewed in person, or what was the experience like? And what were the logistics involved here?
Yeah. Something that comes to mind is that you get a cup of water. like when you're interviewing in person. And I think that I bring that up because it's a reminder that you can, breathe, have a sip of water, then answer the question. You don't have to, a pausing isn't a negative, right? Pausing allows you to breathe and then think about the question, think about what you want to say, and then you can answer it calmly. You don't have to, worry about if am I taking too long? Am I speaking too fast? Which I think sometimes I feel like I'm doing so, or I actually do. So it's okay to just slow down, be in the moment, and answer calmly. And about in person, so for my MPhil, I was more nervous. It seemed more intense. It was also nighttime, and so it was just like I think that kind of impacted because in for my PhD, it was early in the morning and it was just like the sun was coming through. It felt a lot more calmer, and so maybe that made a difference. But I think either way, don't let the vibe of the room throw you off. You know what you're here to say, you prepared, you're ready, go in confidently, and just try to enjoy it because you've prepped so much. So really just try to focus on enjoying it, and that will allow the answers to come out with ease, and you'll be good.
Great, thank you. So you also interviewed in person.
I did.
So what was it like traveling down? I mean, to come here. What's the logistics for involved? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was working at the time and I only had like 4 days, 3 nights off. So I came here and I was jet lagged. So badly. And then my interview was I think on like the last day that I had left the days not to that. But yeah, I got so my interview wasn't at the gatehouse because the gatehouse was something like that. So it was actually at one of the colleges further out. So I actually went there about like 40 minutes earlier, and yeah, the waiting room area wasn't open yet, so I just stood outside and it was raining, and I had like an umbrella and it was just me alone. But yeah, so I was like, I was quite, and like I mentioned, I'm a nervous applicant, so I had, and at the time we were also doing COVID tests.
Oh,
So I went there, I did everything, and then they're like, okay, yeah, come back. I think I went there at 10, and my interview was at like 1. So, but all in all, just going there and being, I think it helped me a lot more being there in person because I make a lot of points of reading the people's faces when I'm in an interview with them. And based on like the framing of their face, I'm like, oh, I should try and explain this a little bit more again. And then I was asked like, does this answer your question, or did I answer that to your understanding? So I think that helped me specifically. Of course, not all applicants have the privilege of being able to come in person. So I think if you are not, then maybe just.
Yeah.
okay.
I mean-
so you interviewed virtually?
Yes.
So
I will just say one thing about interviewing in person, because now it's all done at Gates House, which is the building where the trust and all the scholars have access to. On the day you'll come and there will be scholars around the building, some who are here just to work, others who are here specifically to welcome you. Please know that none of those interactions matter. Like nothing that happens outside of your interview room has any impact on that. So please don't worry about coming across as like, oh, like the most social person ever. And then the other thing I'll just say is like, do what you need to do. Like if coming early and interacting with like 20 people doesn't help you feel good before your interview, you still need to arrive early, but like know that if you want to sit in a corner by yourself, that's completely fine. Everyone's going to give you the space that you need. Like know what's best for you, because for some people, it's not great to come in and meet 20 strangers before you then speak to like 3 professors. So whatever works best for you, we're here to let you know what that looks like, but make decisions for yourself. Virtually, I think what Camilla says is exactly right, which is that you need to take the steps that you wouldn't necessarily have to take in person to make sure that your points are coming across, right? So if you're not sure and you want to gauge whether they want to hear more, then you just have to verbalize being like, would you like me to expand further on that or not? And I also want to assure you that not interviewing in person has no bearing on whether your application is more or less likely to be successful. obviously, if you're really nervous because you're online or for some reason then you perform worse, yeah, that does have an impact. But the mode itself has no implication on whether you're more or less likely to be a scholar.
Justin, do you think you need
Yeah.
to be more outgoing if you're interviewing in person, more personable perhaps, just because that is a barrier between?
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point because I think you're more likely to be a little bit more constrained when you're online as well because you're just interacting through a screen. So I guess I don't have particularly good tips on exactly how you can show that. So if anyone else has experience, but I think Anissa is right that you do want to
Yeah.
Be more outgoing, I think.
show your personality somehow a little bit through the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
have a tip for that. I don't, not,
Yeah.
I mean, this would be applicable for both like in person and online, but perhaps you want to be more or ask, like Nasha mentioned, they ask you if you have any questions, and that could be opportunity if you're not asking a specific question about a panelist and their work, you could ask a more general question about why the Gates Cambridge community, why they're choosing to stay engaged via interviewing. Not to tick a box about, why they, not to tick the box of asking a question, but just to show how you embody the Gates Cambridge
Yeah.
pillars, what you would bring to the community, why you want to be a part of the community, and that would give you a chance to connect even though it's online.
Right. And I think that one of the things I did was to look at the body languages of the people speaking to me. So I remember I don't know if that was the second or the third question I was asked. She had asked me how I would identify the function of an unknown chain, right? And in that moment, I actually did not know the best way to answer that question. So at my first attempt, I said, I've not tried this practically in the lab, but based on the things I've read, I think when you do ABC, that should help. And immediately she pulled down her glasses and then she started to write something and then she was nodding her head. I knew I was saying the right thing. So I just had to build up on that. So sometimes one of the ways to ensure that you're engaging with them is to pay attention to their body languages. So if you're seeing something and you think that, oh, they're nodding their head, it could be a sign that you're going in the right direction and you could just continue in that line or build up on that. If you could see that what you're saying seems to be less engaging from their reaction, it could also be a good way to ask the question Kina said that, is this answering your question? They would actually answer you, or you could just go on, oh, I think you can answer it in this direction. So it's also very good to pay attention to body language and reactions so that it helps you channel your responses in the way they expect you to answer. So I think those were the things that really helped me. And there are things you could also apply while you're interviewing in person. Nacho, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think the same thing that, but also when you are interviewing online, you can do the same thing of the body language because you are looking to their faces. So, and I think all of you have already experiences doing online interviews because I think all of the departmental ones are online. So you did it great in the online one. So don't think that it's gonna take at all doing it online. Don't think so because maybe this is not a good representation because almost all of the scholars did it online because we have scholars from all over the world, so it's quite difficult to fly here only for an interview if you are coming from, I don't know, 12 hours flight. So, yeah, so for me, as I said at the beginning, it was the first in-person interview, and for me it was quite, it was easier to read the people. For me, it was easier also because I express a lot with my hands and everything. I felt like, okay, this is my thing. I can convey the information better. But maybe for other people, it's the other way around. It's like, oh, I prefer to be on Zoom because I'm more shy or something like that. So I can pretend that I'm more outgoing with my laptop instead of being with three people that I don't know. So I think it's also depends a lot in the person. So don't feel bad like, oh, I should choose the online or choose the in person. Everyone is different, and both of them are good. Has the pros and cons.
Yeah, I just want to add something, which is that I think a lot of your personality comes through in the interactions before and after the interview, which I think you don't necessarily feel like you have as much of when you interview online, because when you start, it's like, let's get started. But I think don't be afraid to like build that into yourself, like make small talk with them before and after So then you do, even if you're online, get a chance to show a little bit more of your personality outside of just your ability to answer the questions.
I'll just talk about.
I'm so sorry, and let me just add, it helps if you, even if you are quite nervous, kind of just be like, I'm excited, show the fact that you're happy to be there. I think for me, it was like, I came in and I was just like, hi, good, how are you? And then I kind of sat and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. So then it's kind of like, you're kind of breaking down the ice, and like any kind of like, nervous tension in the room and just going on. Yeah.
Okay. So I want us to just quickly wrap up on interview logistics by saying that if you ever have any issues or challenges with your interview, please know that you can always reach out to the trust. I've seen people who had issues with internet connection and they just have to write back to them to say, oh, I couldn't complete or I couldn't conclude my interview. And they would definitely find a way to ensure that you complete your interview, even if it means to get on a call with you. So please don't feel afraid. Of course, do everything within your means to ensure that you have good environment, good internet connection. This is primarily for people interviewing online. And that's because despite everything I did, I still had issues with my network. So at some point, I was asking them, is it okay to turn off my video just so that they could hear me better? And they were like, oh, it's okay, because I was already done with my interview. But if you ever need to make such adjustments, please feel free to reach out to them. They are very much understanding of what the current situation of challenges might look like, and they are very much willing to help. And even if maybe you have issues with your flights, it got delayed, got cancelled, etc., you can also write to the trust. They'll be more than willing to accommodate those unforeseen circumstances and ensure that they give everybody a fair chance to be interviewed and validate why you should be a GATE scholar. So I hope we've covered every question relating to interviews, logistics. If you have any questions, please just send them to the Slido link, and we're wrapping up in a few minutes. So we got questions about what does it feel like to be in the GATE community? And I'm just going to read out those questions and we'll be wrapping up very quickly. So Justin, Kimia, Nacho, and Isaac. All right, so how does it feel like to be a GATE scholar? How has the GATE Cambridge environment, has it helped you? What does it feel like to be involved? Generally, what has it been like for you? So yeah, very quickly.
Well, I'm quite probably not super representative of the whole community in terms of how much time I've spent in GATES. So we have this council of students who work together to do kind of all kinds of programming, social, academic, professional for the community. I've been on the council pretty much the entire time I've been a youth scholar.
President Justin.
It's been so rewarding. Like, it's such a unique community. I think it's a community that like cares so much about each other and Cambridge in general and the world. I think the care is very deep in the ways that we challenge each other to be better, the ways in which we educate each other, the ways in which we, are always here for each other, but want our community to be the best representation for the kinds of values that the scholarship upholds. So that's really rare. I will also say that as an international student coming to the UK, British people can be very like culturally interesting. And I think having kind of this built-in community of students, but we're all going through that together. And I do think like Britain is a place of like deep racism and xenophobia and has always been, right? So to have this kind of community has been really special for me in the past few years.
Yeah, so unlike Justin, I mainly work on the hospital side, so every single day I go there and then I come back. So that was essentially my entire 3 out of 4 years, a good portion of all of my time. And I didn't get to participate, for example, in the GATE orientation for my year because my visa came late. So I kind of missed out on that opportunity to kind of engage with the other members. But then last year, not sure, so I decided to be one of the GATE orientation collectivities directors. So essentially, I came with the newer incoming class of the Gates Scholars, and we went on the retreats together. And I was one of the people that helped with the activities. So I think there's ample, the idea is that there's ample opportunities for you to get involved in whatever capacity you have to give. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, if your work is at 8 to 4 or 8 to 8 kind of session, or if you're doing field work and things like that, you can't get involved. There's always ways for you to be able to get involved, and then being able to actually interact with people through all of the different activities that we have during the terms. That's really amazing. So like I know the first year I it's like symposium where like we talk about like your research and things like that, and I never worked with that, and then we have all of these WhatsApp groups. We have a book club. We have, which I want to participate in. But I'm like one of those creepy people that like, reads whatever book, and then I'll see if I can actually come on the Sunday where we're. But the idea is that whatever capacity you have to give, that's they make that opportunity for you so that you can participate. And they don't look down on you in any way, shape, or form if you can't participate. And if you know you are only seen once every term. So like Justin and I are in the same college, but this is the first time that we've seen each other since we came back in September. So it's like, you know, and it just fits. Yeah, it's completely fine.
Okay, Anissa, how about you? I mean, given
Um,
the fact that you're even outside of the UK, so
Yeah, actually, yeah. So I did. Yeah, I'm not in Cambridge right now. I'm in the U.S. But I remembered a point that I want to say before I forget is that we have like parents who are Gates Cambridge scholars, and they're very busy, and I think it's still they're and they're not here to represent themselves, but I would say that they're still able to, participate, and I think I'd hope that they find it quite welcoming, despite being very busy. I mean, you have your studies and you're a parent, and I mean, I've seen them around. I've seen them around, but yeah. So I have friends who are parents who are Gates Cambridge scholars, and they're still able to be a part of the community and enjoy it. And so I think that reflects well in the Gates Cambridge community. And I would say also the trust. They're very supportive and willing to provide opportunities and chances for the scholars to become closer, but then also just like for example, I started a speaking series my first year, and that I wouldn't be able to do that without the help of the trust. It was the specifically Jack, who's the um social yeah, the global engagement officer. Yeah. So, yeah, so I was able to work with him and, launch like a pretty cool speaking series event. So I feel like that exemplifies how supportive they can be, both like the community and the trust themselves. So,
great, thank you. Any additions to that?
Yeah, I think that being part of this community is amazing. Like Cambridge is a very weird place for doing a PhD in a good manner, because I had the opportunity this year to meet other PhDs all over Europe, and they were like, "Oh, do a PhD in theoretical physics or theoretical chemistry is so lonely. Like you don't talk to people. In Cambridge, is something that is difficult not to do it." Because you have the people in your lab, but maybe you don't go to the lab because you're a theoretician or whatever, but you have the people in your college. But here you have an additional group, which is the Gates community, which is amazing because sometimes I'm so burnt out of my research and I can come here and I always find a person that I know from orientation. I last year also I was part of the organizing committee of the orientation, so also I met the new cohort. So it's like, okay, I can come here and I have the feeling that I have these friends that maybe you don't see too much, but you have it there. So, and they are not part of your college. They are not part of your research. So they are like new people. So you can like, oh yeah, it's so great not talking about research or not talking about whatever. It's a very nice opportunity also to meet people from other fields, other cultures. I learned a lot my first year here in Cambridge, because also we celebrate Diwali, the Chinese New Year, all of these things that maybe were quite new for me because of my ignorance for sure. Yeah, so it's great to be part of this community, and I wish to be more involved, but I'm very busy. And when I can, I got involved. It's super nice, and also the MPhils that I met last year, they are all over the world. So when I go for a conference, for example, 2 weeks ago I went to San Francisco, so I spent a week with one of my best friends in Gates. That he was an MPhil. So
That's so
yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, so it's a very good opportunity.
Alright. Thank you, everyone. I would not want to share my experience because of time, but trust me, it's one of the best things that has ever happened to me being a Gift Scholar. So let's leave it at that. So we have roughly 10 minutes more, and I'm just going to go through the slide really. And this section, I just want us to answer straight up. Yes, no, just if this is so we can get out of here as soon as possible. Okay, so this person is asking, does the outcome of the scholarship affect consideration for further scholarships at the university? No,
Well,
no, no. A simple backup to that is that I got another scholarship apart from Gates, and I decided to go with Gates. So it doesn't affect in any way. All you have to do is to just maybe accept Gates if you get it, or reject it. It doesn't affect you in any way. Then the next question, I think we've answered this question. What about those applying for ChemQ and they have no research proposal? And yes, I already answered that question, so that's fine. So what was your reply when it asked you why Cambridge and why Gates Cambridge Scholarship? Can you help us?
Yep. So I said why Cambridge because I said, oh, this is the only group doing the research I want to do. And why Gates Cambridge? Because the reason that I just said that it was true. That basically it's an opportunity to have a broad community with a lot of people with the same purposes in life, and you can connect with them. To research, to collaboration, blah, 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 all of these things. I'm trying to be brief, sorry, but trying to link it with that, like this opportunity to connect with people from other disciplines.
Brilliant. So, Anissa, this question is for you. For social sciences of PhDs, do you have any examples of the kind of questions you received about your research proposal? I think you already talked about that, but maybe you could just highlight 2 questions and we can move on.
Just let me think back real quick.
Okay. Or do you want me to come back to you?
Sure, yeah.
All right, so you can do that. Okay, so I'll read the next question or take 2 questions and come back to you. So how long after interviews did you find out about your results?
Took like 3 days in my head. Yeah.
Mine took like a week, and it was the longest week of my life.
I think that they told you, no? When you finish the interview, I think Luisa is gonna tell you. At least in my year, she said, "Oh, the outcome is gonna be this Friday, or next Friday." I think it depends on which day is your interview. I don't know if they change.
It's the turnaround's usually very fast.
Yes, very fast. I think mine took longer because we were in 95. It was the anniversary course, so
Yeah.
it's be different, but it's usually very fast. Yeah. So should you change your project proposal in your scholarship application if you feel another aligns better, or stick with the initial one?
I can answer that. So the Gates Cambridge Scholarship funds you, not your project. So it's, I know people that have changed labs while being a Gates Cambridge Scholarship. So it is less about the work and more about like what you're going to do with the opportunity of being here.
Okay. So Anissa, do you want me to come back to you now?
Yeah. So, one thing the question was 2 questions I received in my, right. Yeah. So one, I remember discussing about my method. So how will I, go about doing my field work, and what prep I need to do beforehand to ensure I can, follow it through. So for me, because I focus on displacement, and, such like countries with like violent conflict, I had to explain how I might have to, pivot from perhaps doing in-person field work to online, and the resources the connections I already have to do so, whether that's NGOs I'm already in contact with. What else? I remember discussing leadership as well. So I think it's pretty obvious that like you have to be somewhat of an activist, right, to want like the pillars of Gates Cambridge. So it's like that's what they mean by leadership. Why, like, what makes you a leader? What makes you passionate and activist in your XYZ field? Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I hope that answers that person's question. All right. So the next question here is, how valuable is it to research the panel members, their current work, the connections, impacts, etc.? What about the two non-scientific members? I'm not sure I understand that, but anyone?
I looked at their fields
Mhm.
and I saw none of them related to me. That was it. I didn't go deep diving into their research or anything like that.
Great.
I did it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was super difficult I mean, not super difficult, super different from my project. So I was trying to explain to them why it was relevant what I was doing. So I did a little bit of research, like half a day, like looking at the profiles, papers, or something like that to understand a little bit which things for them can be important. But maybe it's because I'm a overthinker. So it's what I did. I don't know if it's good or not.
Okay, so I would say that you could just check them out, but you don't need to go about reading their research papers, trying to understand what they do, because it would never be related to what you're proposing. So it's just to have an idea of, okay, who are the people I'm going to be interacting with? It's not like you want to start reading about their research or something. You don't need it. Your interview is about you and your research. Great. So the next question is, how long should you answer in each question? How long?
That's hard. I mean, I get the impression that I spoke for too long because I had 4 questions in my interview, which means I probably spoke quite a bit for each one. But I don't know, as we've kind of said, like, as you're answering, look at what they're like, do they look like they want to ask you something else? Do they look like they don't want to hear any more from you? I know it's harder when you're online, but if you can try and pick up on those cues, it will help you figure out whether your answer needs to come to a close.
And also because it's not a monologue, it's more a conversation.
Yeah.
So I think they are gonna stop you if you are talking too long.
Yeah.
No? Like if you are, oh, why Cambridge? And you start talking for 10 minutes, maybe there is a point that they are gonna say, okay, and about this, I have this question. So
Yeah.
something like that.
I think that's why it's important to highlight the key points you want to answer for each question. It helps you not to ramble and just stay on course, right? The next question here is, I was also wondering how competitive it is for master's applicants. Do they typically have a good chance? I think the answer is yes.
I think we can tell you that the
Yeah.
ratio on average is 2 PhD
Two
students to 1
to
medical
one.
student. So that's just the probability of, like, not probability, but like that's the ratio
The
that they
ratio,
aim
yeah.
for. So yeah, I think there was a question in the
Yeah.
chat.
Yep.
To you. Okay, so while we're checking that, there's a question here. What if the proposal you submitted in the application and the proposal your supervisor proposed are different? How do you tackle that? What if the proposal you submitted in the application and the proposal your supervisor proposed? I think you would be interviewed based on the proposal you submitted. And it's okay for you to change your research maybe after resumption. It's completely fine. For me, my proposal, what I currently do, yes, it's still malaria research, but the actual research is completely different because things change, right? So these dynamics can change, but you will be interviewed based on the proposal you submitted as part of your application material. And I think you should just work with that, right?
Also, that could be a good chance for you to talk about how, or to show how you're in discussion with your supervisor and to like show that connection and how you guys are working on your research
Yeah.
and how you're changing it, etc. So you can turn that into a positive.
Okay, great. So Nacho, I think that question is for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you elaborate more on what you mean by showing the relevance of my research? What I meant is because my panel was not familiar at all with my research, I tried to do just a little bit of outreach to link the research with the impact of the research.
Mm.
So maybe they cannot understand what chromatin is, because they are physicists, but I can say something. Oh, you know that there is like 2 meters of DNA in all of our cells that should be extremely compact, so they can catch a little bit the how difficult is the question or how relevant it is.
Great. So I think we have 2 more questions here and we'll bring this to a close. Anissa, this question is for you. Somebody is asking for social sciences. Could you expand on what technical means? They will ask each about your methodology or how do we plan to do a quiz analysis? I'm not sure that's the correct pronunciation. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed part of that question.
Okay, so the person is
Just the
asking,
end.
yeah, what does technical means in the context of a social sciences panel?
Okay. So it could be your methods, your field work. It could be theory as well. I mean, it could be just the specifics of your research, like what your impact will be, what the application of it is, what you want to get out of it, how you want to use it in the future. I think I did get a question about how I want to apply it later on, or how I see, or where I see myself like maybe in 10 years or something. That might have been either a mock question that I got or like an actual interview question. But either way, it's good to prep, and you can make, if you have a answer to that you find especially important, or that you want to say, you can always find a way to link it to any of the questions that you get asked.
Great, thank you very much. And I also think that you could get asked what potential challenges do you see yourself encountering in your research? I was asked that question, and that was my final question. So it's something that you should prepare for. What are the potential challenges you might encounter in your research, and how do you intend to overcome it? Because it shows that you're already thinking ahead and you're very sound when it comes to your research. So that's also something technical you could prepare for. So the final question here is, when you were asked why you could be a Gates Cambridge Scholar, what was your response? I honestly think we talked about that, but I don't know if anybody wants to add something to that. Why should you be a Gates Cambridge Scholar? I wasn't asked.
I also wasn't.
So most likely you would not even have the time to be asked that question. But I think the easiest way to do that is to just show that you're committed to making impact, you're committed to making a difference, and you don't want to just make it sound like a cliche. You want to make it sound authentic by pulling in your story, the relevance of your research, and the impact it could have on community, or even in 5 to 10 years.
And not even because imagine that you are doing research about the black holes. It's super difficult to say, okay, yes, studying about this is gonna make a difference. But maybe you said, okay, no, I'm gonna study this because in the future I want to become a professor, make an impact in academia because I want to increase representation of these people that is not represented in academia, and this is my goal beyond my research. So represent people, whatever. So it's
Yeah. I also think it's a question you should ask yourself first, right? Like, how do you embody the pillars? And I think it's really important to know your answer and to know yourself, and that way you go in, and it doesn't even, you don't even necessarily need to explicitly answer it, because it'll show through your work and who you are and what you've previously done. And that's also part of why you've already been selected to interview. I think you've already reflected that in some capacity, and you just need to go all the way.
I think for me, I made it a mission. So like I had like 4 different time points in my life where like I specifically had results. So I did like my master's, and then after my master's, I worked at the CDC, and after the CDC, I worked for the government. So I made sure that out of each one of these things, I made it relate to like viral surveillance, sequencing, kind of like making sure that there's a link, consistent link between all of these events in my life, that all surround this whole viral pandemic area. And then also I specified, like, they did ask me, for example, what do I want to be, like, where do I see myself in 10 years? And I said, I see myself in a trailer somewhere in like the Amazon forest, like isolating viruses from different animals and mammals. So it definitely, that does not relate to what I'm doing now, but the underlying concepts are very similar.
So we've spent 2 hours on this conversation, and I think it's really been insightful. Well, they're the ones who will tell us if it's been insightful. So please, would like to get your feedback. Has this been really helpful? Has this been very insightful for you? Please let us know. And if you have any questions we've not been able to answer, please feel free to write to the Gates Cambridge Trust. They would be more than willing to help you through the process. So as we close out this afternoon, in very few minutes, I would want you to just give a word of encouragement, your final words to them. Yeah, because I think that interviews in a week.
Yeah.
So what's going to be your counsel, feedback, encouragement?
I'm happy to start.
Okay.
I mean, Vanessa raised a similar point, which is that when I interviewed, my question to the panel was why they interview. They're not affiliated with Gates Cambridge, a lot of them. They don't get paid. They take 2 days out of their schedule, which they could very well be using for other things to chat to you. And I had panelists who had been interviewing for many years, and they said that they do it because they want to speak with the best applicants to Cambridge from all over the world. So know that that is what they're excited to do with you, and that you are part of that group that they're excited to meet. So when it feels stressful, just know that they think it's a really, really privileged opportunity to get to speak to you. And I think that's something you should keep in mind when you come for this.
I think for me, it just has to feel right for you. Like during even when I like after my interview, when I had those 2 questions that kind of threw me off a little bit, I walked down and I met my supervisor and the lab and the group, and I was like, oh, this is still like a very this is not, it didn't go as bad as I thought maybe. So I think just be confident in your research. I think being humble is very important as well. And again, these people aren't there to like argue with you about your research. They're there to just make sure that you know what you're doing. You can finish in the span of 3 to 4 years, and that you have portrayed ample examples of being Gates Cambridge scholar in the past, and that you can do that in the future as well.
I think I'll just go next. I would just say this, that if you've already been invited for an interview, it's a proof that you're a worthy candidate. Yes, I don't want you to forget that. If you've gotten an interview invite already, it's because they've already seen something valuable in you. And so I want you to just approach your interview with that mindset, because I think that success begins in the mind. If you can see yourself winning through the interview, trust me, it's going to play out. So just have that mental preparedness that I am worthy of this, and I'm going into that interview to validate that, yes, I'm worthy recipient, and I'm waiting for you.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing as this, but I can add something else. So enjoy the interview,
Yeah.
because if you are here, it's because you really enjoy your master program, or you're going to really enjoy your research. So this is an opportunity to speak with 3 experts in their fields, 3 very important people that they are making time for you. So enjoy the process of having a chat with them. Yeah, so enjoy the most the conversation, and I think this is also important, because if they see that you are enjoying, you are happy when you are talking about your research, they can see in your eyes that you are motivated. This is important at all. I don't know, yeah. I think.
Sure.
You guys have already said everything. I feel like I'll echo it though. Have fun with the interview. You guys are ready. You're prepared. It'll be a good time. Just try to enjoy it.
Thank you. So I think that brings us to the end of this conversation. Thank you all for joining. The recording would be made available, so you can always go over everything we shared, right, as you prepare for your interview. And we very much look forward to having you join us September, right? This year.
Oh.
So, very much look forward to having you all join us this September. So have a very good day, and see you when you get to Cambridge. Bye.
See you. Relax.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye, Lisa. Bye, everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining. Thank you, Blessing, for hosting.
Yeah, thank you for
Bye,
joining.
thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
That's so
Thanks,
nice.
Blessing.
So nice.
Such an expert moderator.
I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, tell us, we're not recording.
We are. We're still recording.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay. I was freaked out.
I don't know how to stop it.
It's okay. Sure. Should actually tell you stop
I
recording.
stop recording.